Okay, today we're going to take a quick look at Gevara or Guerrilla War, depending on what country of the world you're in. As you can see, this is another game that uses the tried and true SNK triple Z80 board setup. Again, there's a few differences. This was a later version. There's a new LED that's over here. And kind of a fun, interesting little thing is this board uses the Yamaha Y8950 sound chip, which MSX fans will know is the chip used in the MSX audio cartridges. And curiously, the one on my board here even has, I don't know if you can see it, but it actually has the official MSX logo, copyright Microsoft, copyright ASCII 1984. So I'm guessing this must have just been overstock meant for an MSX audio cartridge that ended up being recycled by SNK. So this is actually the US version. The Japanese version of this game is quite rare and pretty expensive, while the US version is actually really cheap. And that's what I ended up going with, and I'm glad I did, because, well, I'll get that in a minute, but I'm glad I didn't spend a whole lot on this one. Even though it is actually the US version Guerrilla War, since it came from a Japanese shop, but they still gave me Japanese copied art. The Cuban Revolution's hero. I always find it funny on these SNK ads, they always have the stick like it's pointed downward, but in reality it's actually the opposite way. It goes out from thin to thick, and the ads are always thick to thin. We'll admit the artwork's pretty damn awesome. So, if you're not familiar with this one, the arcade original is basically just kind of a remake of the first Ikari Warriors, although, you know, it's based on the Cuban Revolution, so it's supposed to be, like, historic, I guess. This is actually a game I never quite even understood what SNK was trying to do here, because a lot of people actually think this is the sequel to Ikari Warriors, because it really is extremely, it's basically a remake, gameplay-wise. Yes, this is Guerrilla War, the English version, so it's all in English. Love the big giant Cuban mustaches. It's very similar gameplay. The tank's back. There's some changes made, like your basic gun has unlimited ammo now. You're no longer, unlike Ikari, where everything was limited. And you can snipe guys in and out of tanks. And, you know, the graphics are actually really good. The sprites are really big, really detailed. And again, this is, I mean, I'm not an expert, and I'm guessing there were changes made to the graphics chips and whatnots over the years. But this is still the same basic 8-bit board that the original Ikari ran on. And as you can see, the graphics are much better. It is a really nice looking game. It has bosses, but yeah, a lot of people think this is the sequel to Ikari, but it's not. That would be Victory Road or Dogo Soken. Well, this game definitely feels more like a sequel, but it's its own standalone thing. And yeah, to me this was always just a bit of a weird one, which if you haven't figured out by now, if this one feels a bit rushed, this is one of the videos I'll be honest, I just want to get this one done with. If it wasn't for the fact that I'm kind of going through rotary stuff recently, I probably wouldn't even do this one, because, well, not every game can be a winner, and I'm not very pleased with this one. I'm not going to go out and say it's terrible, but, yeah, the previous games were more interesting. So let's just throw in a credit and how's the camera look? I'll say the game itself is got a nice badass theme going for it. It looks good, it sounds good. It's nice and violent. But yeah, it's basically Ikari Warriors with new graphics. You know, like Dogo Soka and the actual sequel, they made quite a few changes which I thought worked really well. But, and yeah, this time you can go, like, you don't just go forward anymore, the screen actually rotates, and you got hostages to save, which, nope. Sometimes a truck goes through here, sometimes it doesn't. Why? I don't know. Yeah, rescuing a hostage refills all of your weapons and your gas, and gives you some gas. I'm actually doing fairly well today. I'm actually amazed myself, because, it's actually quite rare that I manage to get through the first stage on a single credit. Like, it's been quite some time since I've managed to do that. So yeah, as I alluded to earlier, I'm not the biggest fan of this game, mainly because it's too fucking hard. Like, look at this. Like, come on. Because part of the problem, as you'll notice, like, I'm all for a challenge, but this game is just, like, I can see Ikari and the first two games being beatable with practice, but this one is just fucking Turn the volume down. Anyway, this game is incredibly hard, and for all the wrong reasons, essentially. Like if I just start this up again, you can't skip the launch sequence. Now, everything is nice and big and detailed, but this actually really works against the game. You know, in the first two games, things were a lot smaller, and the collision detection was spot on. So with practice, you can weave your way through bullets. But here, like, watch this. Now, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this, but if I zoom in here, now, watch. Did you see me just pick up that gun? Now, if you did, you probably noticed that my sprite and the gun sprite were not anywhere close to touching each other. Yeah, your hitbox is bigger than your sprite, and your sprite is already pretty big. So, you're a big fat Cuban dude trying to weave yourself through a wall of hellfire, and you've got to basically learn where your hitbox even is because it's bigger than you. On top of that, oh, no truck again. So not only is your hitbox huge and you move slowly, since everything's bigger you have less room to dodge stuff, but also the screen scrolling really works against you. There's so many times in this game I have gotten killed because I get run into. Like, by enemies off screen. Like, you'll be going this way as the game scrolls. And an enemy will just spawn randomly and run straight into you. And unless you're like mashing the fire button, you're gonna get hit. The problem though is if you mash the fire button, see, like, what am I actually supposed to do here? Just take a look at this. This is the very first boss, this helicopter, and it moves 3 times faster than I do. And while it doesn't exactly fire a whole lot of shots, you can't exactly move between them. I forgot to zoom out. But anyway, like, this game just wants you fucking dead. And half the time, it's from shit that you will never see coming. Like, just right here, just trying to get through these parts is just like, fucking die. So really, you are extremely dependent on the tank. See, right there. I couldn't actually see the enemy tank because of the way this was scrolled off screen. Or right there. It's, in the end, see, I didn't even mean to pick that gun up. I like the flame. But I just lost it because... It's the US version, so I can actually continue, but... See, I mean, this game is incredibly badass. I even like the music, and I really want to like it, but this is a game where you end up just, see, now I'm being shot from, see, fuck you, like, and you just can't get your fat ass out of the way half the time. See, like, shit just pops out of nowhere. Like, if you know that tank's coming, you actually have a chance. But if you don't, you're fucked. So, I don't know, I like the graphics. It's the same basic gameplay as the original Ikari, but like, I like games that are a good challenge. You can have a game that's stupidly hard, and it can still be really, really fun if it's done properly. But this game, like, if you look on YouTube, there is actually a 1 credit clear video of this game, though the guy does use is emulating and he uses save states. So it's the kind of thing that, if you completely memorize this game, know where all this shit's gonna pop out of you, know what's coming, especially when the screen scrolls sideways, it is definitely a beatable game, but it's one you probably have to spend a lot of time with. I mean, just look at, especially with the hitboxes, because like that helicopter boss, it seems like you should be able to just stand between those 3 missiles, but you basically can't, unless you're absolutely perfect, which is really hard to do because the game moves really fast and the hitbox is bigger than you are. I mean, it is an impressive game. The graphics look great. It sounds great. I've credit-fed my way through the game, and at least in single player, it never slows down, unlike the first 2 games, which got tons of slowdown. But here, it's completely fixed, even with the improved graphics. So overall, it's a game that I really wish I could love, but as far as the rotary games go that I have, I gotta say, this is one that's just not really all that fun. Because the instant you start to really enjoy it, like, it's one of those games that once you get towards the end, you basically end up just hitting credit, because you just die and die and die. In fact, even the guy that, save stated his way through, he basically uses some tricks to basically keep the tank as long as possible, because if you lose the tank, you're even more screwed, because you're just massive hitbox. It just screws you over so many times. So overall, this is a game that I really wish I enjoyed more than I did, but the good parts about this game, though, one, it's really cheap. I mean, this is a US one imported into Japan, and it was still fairly affordable. And in the US, you can get one of these for like $50. So if you have a rotary setup, I'd say it's definitely worth trying, considering it is one of the cheapest games to use the rotary controls. But it's definitely not one of the greats. I will say, though, an interesting and slightly ironic point about this one is, the NES ports of the original Ikari was terrible. The NES port of the sequel, Victory Road, was an unusual port. I didn't really care for it so much. I much prefer the arcade game, but still, it was okay, but odd. However, the NES version of Guerrilla War, the port of this game, is actually pretty fucking awesome. And it's probably, as far as the SNK rotary ports went, probably one of the better ones. I'd say I prefer Heavy Barrel on NES myself, but the NES version of Guerrilla War is a hell of a lot more fun than the arcade game. So yeah, they can't all be great ones, and yeah, this one's a bit of a dud in my opinion.